Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
We heard this morning a repetition of the account in Genesis of God working 6 days to create the world and how he rested on the seventh day. But the great problem, still unsolved, is which was the seventh day? It's always been puzzling to me that the three Abrahamic religions regard the Sabbath on different days. Judaism on Saturday, Christianity on Sunday, and Islam on Friday. And they all three agree that God made the world and rested on the seventh day. Let's first of all examine how Judaism considers day and night, because Genesis tells us it was evening and it was morning. So that must mean that the day begins in the evening and goes on until sunset the following day. And so indeed we do estimate the calendar and the festivals, starting each with the evening, and officially the evening begins when there are 3 clear stars in the sky, and it goes on until sunrise the following day. Jews have followed the original proclamation in the Bible that the day of rest should remain on the seventh day, Saturday. Some Christian churches have done the same, the Eastern Church is among them, and several sects, such as the Seventh-day Adventists, still maintain Saturday as the Sabbath. So, as the first Christians were by definition Jews, why is Sunday, usually referred to as the Lord's Day, their holy day? And who changed it? It's observed by most Christians as the weekly remembrance of the resurrection of Jesus Christ, who is said to have been raised from the dead early on the first day of the week. It's often said that Constantine the Great, the first Christian Roman emperor, ordained that the Sabbath should be on the Lord's Day, Sunday. This seems to be a false premise because the Christians had regarded Sunday as the holy day before the time of Constantine. They wanted to differ from their Jewish ancestors, and one way of doing that was to worship on a different day of the week. Constantine did, however, enact the first civil law regarding Sunday. Sabbath isn't mentioned by name, but refers only to resting on the venerable day of the sun. And perhaps this has a link to the very ancient tradition of sun worship. And Constantine went on to add that persons engaged in agricultural work may freely and lawfully continue their pursuits, because it often happens that another day is not so suitable, maybe it rained all day, for grain growing or vine planting, unless by neglecting the proper moment for such operations, the bounty of heaven may be lost. So, whether you count the week beginning on Sunday or Monday is a moot point, because if you consider Sunday to be the seventh day, then Monday is the first. And this often depends on where you live. You've probably noticed nowadays that when you buy your diary for the year to come, it does sometimes start the week on Monday as the first day of the week. And moving eastwards from the American continents, you'll find that both South and North America have Sunday as day one. Europe mostly has Monday, and Asia and the Far East are mixed. Some countries in the Middle East and North Africa start the week on Saturday. So it seems to be more a question of custom than religion. And until about 100 years ago, the world worked 6 days a week, and then came the weekend. And of course, you may remember that in A Christmas Carol, Dickens' A Christmas Carol, when Bob Cratchit timidly asked Scrooge for a Christmas day off, so that he can be with his family, he notes that it only comes once a year. And Scrooge reluctantly agrees on the condition that Cratchit comes to work early the day after Christmas. So the poor chap was clearly working 7 days a week. Many people can claim that the weekend was invented by Henry Ford, the car manufacturer, because in 1926, he gave his workers 2 days off a week instead of 1, and apparently production increased enormously. In 1932, America, the weekend was officially declared, and in England, during the Industrial Revolution, workers introduced Saint Monday, the practice of working through the week, having Sunday off for religious practices, and Monday too, to get over the excesses of the previous day. And then it became usual for manual workers and then white-collar workers to take Saturday off as well as Sunday. By the 1930s, it was the economy rather than religion that ordained the weekend holidays, and the 2-day week became common throughout England's workforce. Of course, there are now suggestions that the working week will soon consist of 4 days. Now, I mentioned the apparent discrepancy in the three religions. So let's see why Muslims consider Friday to be their holy day. It's not like us, a Sabbath for them. It's not a holy day like Christianity, but it is the most important day of the week. It's a day of assembly. So when Muslims hear the call to prayer, they should hasten to come together and leave off business. They also maintain that Friday was the day Adam was created, that he was admitted to paradise and then he was expelled, and it will eventually become the day of judgment. Their Friday prayer takes place in the afternoon. You're allowed to work in the morning. It's mandatory for all Muslim males who are of age to take prayers in the afternoon on Friday. And although many women and children attend prayers as well, it's not essential. We wonder quite how they placed women in the order of prayer in their religion. There's no insistence on refraining from work or sport or any other activity. The only commandment is to attend the mosque. So this insistence on prayer, on whatever day you believe to be correct, has brought with it many obligations, some of which seem somewhat eccentric. Strict observance is for believers in Presbyterianism, for example, who keep Sunday very, very severely. Some of you may remember our very first secretary here, Constance Stewart. She converted to Judaism, but she was brought up as a strict Scottish churchgoer. And she once told me that as a child, she was not allowed to laugh on Sunday. She had to go to the kirk 3 times during the day. She couldn't play with her dolls, and she was examined in the catechism every Sunday before breakfast. So strong was the urge to keep Sunday as a special day that in 1831, an organization was formed to do just that. It was called the Lord's Day Observance Society. It's changed its name now. It's now called Day One Christian Ministries. It was opposed to Sunday newspapers, to travel by train on a Sunday, postal deliveries, and it invoked considerable backlash in Victorian England, and indeed it still does. When shops began opening on Sunday, which most do now, some with restricted hours, there was much opposition. And big stores, even now, still open usually from 11 till 4 on a Sunday. But some, including garden centres, don't open at all on Easter Sunday. Very observant Jews, to our minds, have equally strict rules under the all-bracing reason that such contraventions are work forbidden by God. No entertainment, no use of electrical devices, no musical instruments on the Sabbath. I think very few Westminster Synagogue members could attend Sabbath services without the use of cars or public transport, because we're a metropolitan rather than a local synagogue. That's our choice. I still find the concept of handing over Sabbath work to a non-Jew rather unpleasant, but in some Orthodox homes it's still the custom. In the mosque, worshippers don't celebrate a Sabbath as such, but they do have still certain rules of behavior, such as washing before entering the mosque, not sitting, you know they always kneel for prayer, not sitting because they might fall asleep during prayers, and not rush to leave the mosque or crowd the exits. And it isn't necessary for them to abandon traveling or work, except during the hours of prayer. And of course, stricter rules apply to the month of Ramadan when they're fasting and they're not even allowed to take their medication during the day. In all religions, modern life has made it more and more difficult to obey the ancient ideas of a holy day on which behavior should change. Education, business, concessions to the necessities of the world as it is today have caused us to disobey the strictures of holy books, whichever you follow. But most Jews, I don't know about other religions, find a certain warmth, a feeling of belonging, of pride, in meeting their friends and their family on a special day in a special place. Long may it continue.